Hello again, I'm back. Or maybe this is the first time you've seen this video, or any other one for that matter. Um, this one is going to be about some policy ideas and ideas that I could bring to the table of council. Um, as it happens, the mayoral candidates are pitching a lot of information and ideas and things that need to be sorted out. So not applying or not standing as a council mayoral candidate, I'm not getting into that space and will happily follow the leader, so to speak, and look into their ideas and issues and provide some input as a result. And look into means work, I guess, and do the research on them. Right, here's some of my ideas. I shall use my trusty list because it helps, and hopefully I can see it because I'm going blind in my old age. So there we go. Here we are. One idea I've got here is the idea of funding for council. It's quite a hot problem. Rates are becoming a problem and costing too much, and there's various arguments about that. One of them, of course, is to change the rating process from a capital value to a land value. There are some interesting arguments on both sides of the fence on that one, and I'm not too sure actually now that I say that, because there are pros and cons on both ideas. So I need to look into that further. Another approach, though, is to have the council actually be able to make more money, and an enterprise unit is something I've pitched where it goes out and looks for ideas and produces goods or services to generate income. There's a convention in that, though, that central government, or at least local government anyway as well, won't compete with private business, so there's a problem with that, but it can be worked through, especially if the services or goods are specifically designed for use within councils. And of course there are councils around the world, especially in the Commonwealth, that could be possible clients. So it's not too difficult to get around that convention. There's another idea I've come up with, which is not new, but the council could have a bonds process where the public buy bonds from the council, investing the money in council assets or services. Profits from those are returned back to the bond purchaser as interest, if you like. I don't quite know how that all works, to be honest, but it's been floated elsewhere. So there's that sort of an idea with bonds as well. The other idea I've got here is to have far more public input into everything, to have online polling a great deal of that for ideas that are not absolutely vital, that can be discussed as concepts. One, of course, would have been, if that had happened, a poll on whether we want cycleways. That would generate, of course, a lot of lobbying in the community and probably a lot of response too. Having said that, the information would have to be pretty clear, and people would have to understand what they're dealing with and know what the pros and cons would be. So that sort of idea could be used across the board with all sorts of things the council does. After all, it's your council, and the council needs to work for you, albeit that is also a governing body and has to deal with legislation, administer that, and enforce it too, of course. An idea I'm just about to pitch very soon today is a community council. In other words, call the council the Wellington Community Council, not City Council, but the Wellington Community Council. The point of that really is to put everybody on the same page and to have everyone, including the staff and the public, really have a more of a softer approach on how things are done, because at the moment it can get a bit adversarial. And it would work a bit better for everybody if things were a bit more gentle. There we go. You know, we could have less antagonism if things don't go well. Um, that also includes making sure the communication is really well done so that whatever the council decides in regard to a matter with a member of the public, that the reasoning is fully communicated, that there is a discussion and that everything is on the table. That is really vital because it can save a lot of trouble and harm in actual fact too. Um, I don't know if that's a major problem at the moment, but even in principle, it's a good idea. So there's things to be considered there. Um, Another idea we could implement, which is really quite radical in a way, is to scrap all the local councils. Um, that seems a little bit strange, but amalgamation is the key word at the moment around the place, and that is essentially what happens. The local councils get abolished and a larger entity is established. Right now, of course, we've got regional councils, so they could actually be reformed to take over the same role, more or less, as the local councils. Pros and cons on that are yet to be discovered, but it seems to be working okay in Auckland, which is a huge council now, massive area, huge population, and perhaps there are savings and efficiencies there that weren't there before. Have to do some more work on that to double check. So there's one thought there. Right now, I said before about customer focus. At the moment, there is 27% support for the council, which is really very low. So there's obviously something wrong with everything. I think it's mainly the communication problem, to be honest. If council communicated better, explained things more clearly, gave people more chance to put their case forward, then the satisfaction rating would probably go up. There is a problem, of course, that the level of everything, the standards of things have had to drop because of the financial problems with earthquakes and other things that the councils had to deal with. So some revision of all of that is seriously needed before it gets too bad. It's already pretty bad, but it can't get much worse, hopefully. The cycleways, again, this is going to cause some problems perhaps, but I'm wondering whether cycleways need to be charged, whether cyclists have to pay to use a cycleway or some way levied. It sounds a bit of a dramatic thing, but motorists have to pay registration fees, and that goes towards running their system there, and cyclists are getting an exclusive, very expensive pathway for themselves, and maybe there should be some contribution towards it. Not a lot, but something, because they do cost a lot of money and the maintenance of them is not cheap. I've covered a few things there. I shall quickly move to page 2. Improvements in services for the council's support stuff. Oh yes, this is one that's really quite radical. This is really an in-house thing, but it would also help, I think, a great deal if councillors then became more like MPs and had council paid for clinics and offices in the community. Someone would be there 5 days a week, staffed, a support person for the councillor, just like the MPs have a place of contact for the public to go and talk to about things, about problems or ideas or issues they've got. Somebody in person, somebody there, somebody real. Also, of course, the councillor themselves could run their clinics from the office and actually even work from it, to be honest, as well. Would be better than being at home. working from home is all very well, but work-life balance is nice, and getting out of the house and going to the job is actually better for people. I think, generally speaking, at least a few days a week. Another problem we've got at the moment is housing. It's been discussed a lot. There's social housing is being bandied about as a fix, which of course is one good idea. There is a problem about who provides it, whether it's local government or whether it's central government, and I don't know the pros and cons on that. Apparently it's cheaper if it's the central government and more expensive if it's local government, or some variation on that. In some form of it, residents pay 25% of their income, or the market rate, I should say, and another variation, it's 75%, and I'm not too sure how that's been derived, but it probably needs sorting out because it doesn't sound like a good situation. What I had thought, though, was somehow providing incentives for empty nesters to vacate their homes. Quite a radical idea. I know that people like heritage and living in their home for a long time, and it is quite a serious issue. Nevertheless, some people might be quite happy to relocate or move out, and some incentive to do that might be a easy thing to figure out. And then the property becomes available for young families to use rather than having to build more buildings, more housing. That's one is going to be a little bit contentious, but then again, it's only an option, not mandatory. There's another problem for the rates, actually, the idea of rates again. There's a issue with the government, central government doesn't pay rates, which is wonderful, but yet central government charges GST on rating income for local government. So there's a bit of a disparity there. Anecdotally, I've heard that in Wellington, the government is not paying $40 million a year in rates. I'm not sure if that's correct, but it's a wee chunk of money that the council could certainly do with, and nothing much in small change in regards to central government. So, and quite frankly, the rest of the country is benefiting on the back of that, with Wellington housing most of the government offices. So it's a bit of a freebie for the rest of the country that Wellington has to pay for. So that's well worth a thought there. There's an odd problem I've just realised to do with being a candidate. There's a little saying I've come up with that disability defeats democracy. And right now, if you're disabled and want to be a candidate, you have got some big problems, because it's very hard going to do things with a disability. If you're blind, or if you've got hearing problems or mobility problems, the chances of you being a candidate successfully are very limited, and support needs to be available for people with those issues, or any issue like that, to be able to campaign and get past the hurdle of the disability. Other than that, of course, no other advantage can be applied, because effectively it has to be an equal playing field for everyone. But if you've got a disability, you've got a hard road. So some help is needed there. One thing back on the disability front that I have experienced myself in the past is disability parking. Right now, the fine for that on public roads is $700 if you don't have a permit, which is helping a lot. Nevertheless, people still do park in them, and I have an idea of a flying squad of tow trucks available to go and literally pick up the car within 15 or 10 minutes and take it away. Sounds a bit radical, but it's not impossible, and would certainly make life much, much better for people with a disability to get into those parks. So there's an idea for that one. I had another thought too about legal aid for people who are complaining about the council's activities or have a problem or want to contest the council's position on a decision. Right now, it's quite a burden to try and pay for legal representation to take the council to court. And some form of legal aid could be sorted out by the council to provide assistance, believe it or not, with that. Obviously, the onus would be on the council to try it extremely hard to make sure that the other person, the opposing party, fully understood what was happening so that the legal situation wasn't needed. But if it really came down to it, providing support to the opposing party would be an idea. This would actually have to have some very stringent requirements and not be a free-for-all. So there would have to be quite a lot of thought put into that. And if the opposing party lost, then there might be some way of that they have to pay the bill. But we'll have to see. I'm not sure about that one. It's just an idea. Excuse me. Let's have a look now. Social media, 15 minutes. Hope you're still with me. I'm starting to think social media is becoming a huge problem for the community. And it is a community asset. It is actually a social good. And that breaches, or meets, I should say, the mandate within government and councils in particular being local. How this would ever be done is a little bit of an issue, but at least the council could establish some social media sites which people could use that are properly moderated, properly maintained, and provide some actual right of reply and redress if information is wrong. It is quite a big problem because it is a big environment and people can be very, very free to say what they like. This can cause incredible problems and damage to the community. It's a big deal, and it's a worldwide problem, of course, too. But at least the council can set the pathway in motion to try and address it by providing safe environments for people to use that are properly moderated and, as I said, where redress is possible. There are further things that need to be done there, but I'll get into those another day. Here's an ethical one, which is a strange thing to say in political environments, but ethics. In my view, council candidates should not vote for the mayor. Sounds a bit odd, but the thing is that essentially, if a council candidate becomes a councillor, they really need to have a very free view of who they're dealing with as the mayor, and to prevent any bias, even though there might be one anyway, but it would be excuse me, a safe bet for the public to know that the council candidate did not vote for the mayor. And therefore there is no bias towards that person or against them. That idea would need to be discussed a bit further, but I'm pretty keen on it, and I won't be voting for a mayor in the election on that basis. Sounds a bit strange, but there is a reason. It's a bit of a technical one in the election area of the process. There is a possible idea there, again in my little list, of having the council split off its regulatory requirements into a different organisation, which sounds a little bit interesting and difficult to explain in a hurry, but in a lot of cases the council becomes the ambulance and the police officer at the same time. They are required at times to help the public and sort out problems, but also required to enforce them, enforce rules. So this then, in theory, creates a conflict because there's two opposing views happening at the same time. Giving you a direct example is difficult, but perhaps, let's say, parking. The council has to provide parking, it has to provide spaces, it has to provide access to them, and it has to provide some way of governing them as well, because you can't park in a space all day in the middle of town and tie it up unless you pay for it, is the way we're doing it, of course. Therefore, in a council car parking space, the council provides that park, but also has to enforce it. And this example is not one of the best ones, but you might get the idea where it could be better if somebody else did the enforcing, and therefore the issue wasn't there of the conflict. Might actually be more applicable now I think about it, to do with building and consenting and other things like that. Just an idea, but obviously some debate and discussion is needed to figure out whether it's worth pursuing or not. Previously, I've mentioned in the media release to have 21 minutes down the road where you're at, so hopefully you're still here. So anyway, previously I've mentioned having the council elections move from October to November to allow a bit more time for campaigning and better weather. Since then, I've thought again and now wondering about April, because that would put it towards the end of summer when everything is nice and warm and people are happy to stand outside and chat in their front door. Also easier for people to get to meetings, and even for that matter, right now as voting has started, even easier to get the voting papers into the mail or into the famous orange boxes. So that's one idea of having voting in now April rather than October. Right now, that would then extend the voting cycle by 6 months, or shorten it. Probably extending, I'd imagine, would be what would happen. There actually is another problem as well coming up too. The central government elections are likely to happen every 4 years fairly soon. And at some stage, this is going to create quite a big problem, because we can't have the local government elections and the central government elections really happening at the same time, or even in the same year. So the council elections may actually have to switch as well to a 4-year term. That's going to be probably quite good to give people who know what they're doing a decent run at getting things done. As we've discovered with Tauranga, if it really falls apart, then central government can chip in, or step in actually, and put in a commissioner to take over. So there could be a 4-year term there. Whoops. And also, just on the April idea of the election, even central government might like to switch over to an April date for the same reasons, but that's just one thought on that one. So there we go. We've now done 23 and a half minutes, so I better end here. You've probably finished your cup of coffee. And I hope you found some of these ideas interesting. Of course, in the nuts and bolts of council activity, there is a very, very strong work program that is developed by the administration, and things are happening all the time. Information is absolutely going flat tack around the place to get things moving. So there's a lot of work there for councillors to digest that information as best they can and make decisions. It's quite a tough job, and it's a challenge. And I think anybody that runs and actually gets into council is in an interesting spot. It's really a tough job, and the responsibility is huge. And this goes back again to what I was saying about representation and having the council get as much input from the locals as possible on what they want, because then of course the onus is taken off the councillors somewhat, and the majority then gets to have a city they want to live in. And that's what the whole show is all about. So there we go. I shall end now. Thank you very much for having a look. The elections are happening right now. I'm Thomas Morgan, and your vote number 1, 2, or 3 will do. I don't mind. Take your pick. But one of them would be very good. Not anything lower. Thanks very much. Okay, I shall go now. Thanks for watching and have a nice time. See you.